I never gonna stop. I will walk through snow. It comes up to my eyes, but I'll eat it and I'll get some moisture that way, and I won't die in the snow. Oh, Christmas time is here. Oh, Christmas time is go. Oh, I like to snow. Oh, I like the snow. Snow, snow, snow. Ba-ba-ba-doo. I can't believe it is nearly Christmas time. Happy Christmas time. Hey, Salmon Skins. Happy Christmas. Happy holidays. If you're not into the whole religious thing, which Irish people are generally into, even if they're not religious. That's the sort of indoctrination thing that's going on with Irish people. Even if you hate Christmas, or even if you hate Christ and all his teachings, or most of his teachings, you're still going to celebrate Christmas. But also, ironically, you're going to put up a Christmas tree, which is a pagan tradition. The pagan traditions and the Christian traditions go hand in hand. Easter, it's all about fertility and bunnies, fucking like bunnies. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be swearing. I was actually not going to swear in this episode because my latest patron, Ryan Ritchie, hi Ryan, who lives in the Rocky Mountains with his family, which makes it sound like he's some sort of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, but he's not. But yeah, I'm sorry for swearing. I was going to have this as a non-sweary episode, but, you know, you just got to occasionally drop an F-bomb. Now, he did say to me, because he sent me a couple of messages on Twitter, saying that his kids, when they're listening to it, they put on this kind of filter thing, which changes all the swearing from FUCKs to things like fork and herb and lovely man. That's what I used to do on reviewables. Whenever I swore, I'd just put in a little clip of me saying lovely man instead of the see you next Tuesday or occasional words that I would use. I try not to swear. I don't swear a lot in my real life. Occasionally, you know, I think it's one of those things where, you know, you have that age-old thing of people saying, well, if you use a lot of swear words, then your vocabulary isn't very good. And that's not true. That's been proven by science. The people who swear have an even greater vocabulary than people who don't swear. And I'm basing that off of an article I read 12 years ago that I still believe. I still believe. Yeah, so Easter, to get back to what I was talking about a minute ago, Easter is about fertility and bunny rabbits doing it. And explain that one to your kids, Ryan. And bunny rabbits doing it. And eggs, fertile eggs full of chocolate that Jesus impregnates. And then he makes tiny little chocolate Jesuses. And that's the connection there. Because, oh, hello. Sorry about that, guys. I was gesturing with my hands, forgetting that there is a metal microphone arm holding the microphone. It sounds like I have a robot. It sounds like I have C-3PO holding the microphone in front of my face. Master, are you finished doing your podcast?
Yeah, just give me a few minutes there, 3PO, will you?
Of course, Master. I'm here to serve you.
Oh, you're here to serve me, yeah?
Yes, Master.
Oh,
I was wondering, what kind of service do you do? And also, can I wipe your memory banks? I'm sure you can, sir, but why would you be... Oh, what's going on? I'm in a different room, and I feel all sticky.
Oh, yeah, how are you, 3PO? I was making the jam sandwich, and all the jam got all over you, so I had to give you an oil bath, like what you has when you get cleaned up. So Now you're all better now. Sorry about all the jam. It was a clear jam. A milky white jam-like substance. But I got rid of all traces of it. Sorry, I meant to point the massage bottle away from you before I did all that. I'm Luke Skywalker. How's it going? Me dad used to be a Jedi, but I'm not into all that kind of religious shit. I like just flying around shooting space rats in a ship and complaining about being a teenager. Yeah, well, I act 14, but I'm actually 20. Just arrested. When you grow up in the middle of the desert and you don't have many friends, and the friends that you do have that you chat to are cut out of the final cut of the film, it makes you look even lonelier and sadder. That's why I have to resort to getting me jam out on the robots. Get your jam out on the bots. That's what all me friends would be chanting if they were there watching me with me jam out. What am I talking about at all? What was I talking about? I was talking about religious things. Yes, Merry Christmas, everybody. It's Christmas time. And there's perfectly legitimate reasons to be afraid. They should rewrite that song. Well, they probably won't. I hope you're having a good lead up to Christmas. It seems like Christmas is, if not going to be cancelled, it's going to be quite subdued. I'm already feeling the effects of it. I was in town last night in the lashings of rain. The Enid Blyton weather was out lashings and lashings of rain. And that's a weird reference that I don't know if people will get. Enid Blyton books, she used to say lashings and lashings of cream. It was all nice sort of middle class children with nothing better. They didn't have any summer jobs, so they had to go around solving crimes, didn't they? Fucking do-gooders. There's more bad language again. I'm so sorry, Ryan. So, Christmas time. It's a couple of weeks before Christmas. COVID is on the rise again, although reports today are saying that the booster jabs are very effective against the virus. This Omicron, and every time I was actually gonna tweet out something, but I'm not very good on Twitter, and I'm not very funny on Twitter, and I don't, tweet out every single thought I have, like some people clearly feel that they have to do, and sometimes they're funny, but sometimes they're really just the worst tweets imaginable. It's kind of, to me, I always in my head realize that, and maybe I'm overthinking social media. I probably am. No, I definitely am, because I'm thinking about, this is the record that we leave for aliens to sift through. And I don't think I want them to, hear about my sourdough journey through lockdown. I don't think that's going to be in the history books, basically. There's going to be a chapter on COVID-19 in the history books, and it's not going to mention, meanwhile, in Dublin, Edwin Salmon's sourdough journey continued apace. And it'd be rewritten history. Typical. A man taking credit for a woman's sourdough journey, because it was Cara's sourdough journey. I keep saying sourdough journey. But it was. She nursed that yeast, and she only killed it a couple of times in preparation for having a baby, which so far remains alive. Oh, God. Of course he's alive. He's alive. He's thriving. He's doing so good. And Christmas time is coming. We're looking forward to, I think I'm going to get him like a mini beard, because people say that Luke looks like me. And to me, that's always been a sort of a, well, duh kind of comment when people say, your child who shares your genetic makeup looks like you. Wow, you think? That's me being a See You Next Tuesday. about it, but I don't see it really in Luke. I mean, he's a handsome baby, but it almost feels like you're taking a backhanded compliment about your own physical appearance when people praise your child for looking so sexy. And you go, oh, thank you very much, of course. I mean, look at me. And you can imagine, my wife's not here, but you can imagine how amazing she looks. By our genes combined, this is Sexy Baby. Ba-ba-ba-ba, Sexy Baby, solving crimes and doing things. Oh yes, I've gotten some new reviews on Apple Podcasts. Someone sent me a review saying they loved Baby Detective. The last episode, they rewound it twice. I will have the season finale of Baby Detective, the long gestating season finale of Baby Detective, which I will be putting out in the middle of next week. So that will be an extra episode for everyone, because I'm ramping it up before Christmas, because I think after Christmas week, probably take a little break. Probably I'll have a New Year's episode, and then I might take a break for a couple of weeks. I won't be taking a break on the Patreon, though, because there will be extra episodes up, especially exclusively for you. I want to tell you all the mundane stuff I've been going through, and talking about the babies and the consistency of his poo. When he eats almond butter smashed up with sweet potato, he really loves it so, especially for poo. So you'll hear all about that. You can hear all about some of it now. The last couple of episodes, I've been talking about Luke's swimming and how his swimming is going. It's going swimmingly, guys. Yes, I hope he gets his sense of humor from us as well. He should, because both his parents are hilarious people and so humble. They've met a sexy baby. So yeah, like Luke's smile is lovely, and I'm kind of like wondering what teeth will look like in that mouth, because he's got this big gummy smile. And I think he looks like Cara sometimes. She says, oh, he's the spit of you, he's really growing into you. I've got to get a false beard and put it on him, and then I'll know for sure, because his hair is he's starting to have probably the same amount of hair on top of his head that I do on top of my head, because I usually have it shaved. So there's not much of a head of hair on him, but there's some head of hair. But he's doing so well in his swimming classes, guys. He is top of the class. I've been complaining about Geraldine, the passive-aggressive swim instructor, who is shaming me for not taking Luke's nappy off and it, getting saturated with water, becoming a potential dead weight that would drag him down to the bottom of the shallow pool. But Monday, he did so good, and he hadn't slept that well the previous night, so I thought he was going to be cranky as hell. But no, he was great. And they have these noodle things. Now, Geraldine didn't call them noodles. They look like, like big foamy straws for a giant to drink his giant milkshake that takes the citizens of Lilliput 4 days to put together, and probably a month for the glass blowers to blow the glass to hold the milkshake. And then you have to get the metal workers to make the little metal cup with the extra bit of milkshake underneath, because the giant's got to have the full milkshake experience that you get in an Eddie Rockets or any unbranded American style diner. So these noodle straws, which are used for, they're flotation devices. So all the babies went on their backs with this noodle across their sort of shoulders and their arms over the noodles. And then each parent and or guardian, because sometimes in these classes they have like the nannies, but those are the people who can afford nannies and don't want to experience their child swimming. or learning how to swim. But Luke was on his back. Every other parent was like holding the legs of their children to keep them afloat. But Luke was floating away like a log that was sort of giving out, like a slightly annoyed, screaming log, but made of cutesy flesh with a beautiful smile. Look at that log. And I was so proud of him. I was like, and Geraldine was looking around at everyone, and I looked around at everyone, and I put like both my hands up in a sort of a, look, Geraldine, no hands. He's doing it all himself. And she gave me a sort of a impressed kind of, and I gave her sort of a smug sort of, yeah, I figured he could do it. So he was giving out, but he wasn't crying. He was giving out in a sort of, what the hell's going on here? Okay, I'm not 100% sold on this, but yeah, all right, go on, go for it. And then we do the dunking thing. You dunk them underwater. And then she did this thing where you put them, you like knock them face forward into the water, and then they turn over like a paper tap, and come back, and you pick them back up again. And he was like, huh? He didn't cry at all. And then at the very end of the class, again, thank you, Geraldine, because I think Luke was top of the class. She went to Luke and sort of, I'll do it with Luke first because he'll definitely pull this off, and he'll show all the other babies what's what and what they should be doing, what kind of level they need to get at. And she said, so out, hold out your arms as far as they go, move back. So I moved back with my arms outstretched, and she basically put him under the water and sort of threw him towards me underwater. So he's like kind of gliding through the water, and then I picked him up, and he was like, yeah, cool, no bother. And I was very, very impressed. It's kind of sad in a way, is it? That I was like emotional at how well he was doing in the swimming, and also thinking he's a much more advanced swimmer than I am, or possibly will ever be. But now he has inspired me to actually learn how to swim. I learned how to sort of float before. Myself and Cara were on holidays before Luke was born. But now I'm going to learn how to actually swim. I'm going to do it, guys. You watch me. Swimming round in the water with the baby, and it's not my daughter, he's a baby. He's a little boy, baby, don't you know? He's not wearing pink and it shows. He's wearing blue, so you knows that he's not a girl, he's a boys. And he likes playing with boys' toys. What's a boy's toy? I'll tell you now. Oh, oh, it's dinosaurs and things like that. Dinosaurs and trucks and all that crap. And girls can't play with that. For some reason, I don't know why. That's not true. The girls and boys can play with that. Whatever they like, it's all learning. Don't gender the toys. There you go, guys. MC Damo Dave with his Christmas non-gender specific, gender neutral rap about toys called Don't Gender the Toys. MC DJ Damo Dave. He's an MC and he's a DJ. That's why he has two names. Most artists only have one name. Some only have one word. They don't even have a surname. I'm talking about Cher. I'm talking about Lady Gaga. If you're not using the formal with her, you just call her Gaga. You don't have to use the lady only when she is attending formal events. Guys, we have a lot more of the podcast coming up, but soon, very soon, right now in fact, we're going to take a short little break, and we'll be right back after these messages. And we're back, guys. Thank you so much for listening to those messages. Every time you listen to a messagee, an advertising executive gets his wings. Because it's Christmas time. I hope everyone is staying safe. I know that things are looking bleak again because of the Omicron Persei 8 from Futurama. It came from space. That's the latest conspiracy theory. Because they named it Omicron, people think that it's after coming from space. No, I don't think people actually think that. But what is happening, more important than all that, what I'm seeing on social media is that people are sharing their Spotify Wrapped end of year lists where they tell you what you've been listening and how much you've been listening to. I don't know why my voice went up there. You have been listening. Everyone's been listening. And yeah, look, Radiohead's up there, but not number one this year. For some reason, well, I know the reason. The reason is I love the Beatles. And the Beatles are my number one artist that I've listened to this year. Not Taylor Swift, not Ariana Grande. Oh, Ariana Grande. But the Beatles, yeah. And now, I think that was because for some reason I love the Beatles. I think they're good. Maybe that's a controversial take. Not everyone does enjoy the Beatles as much as I do. But hey, I love them. And it's a weird thing because when you grow up listening to the Beatles as, you know, like, I mean, a lot of people do. If you're a muso like me and you like to stroke your beard and cluck your tongue and tell everyone what's cool and what's grooving, then you're obviously going to land on the Beatles. And when I was younger, I would listen to all these bands. Like I was big into Elvis Presley. I think I've mentioned this before. I was a official member of the Elvis Presley Fan Club of Ireland for a year, maybe over a year. And we get these like someone photocopied them in their gaff and stapled them together to send them out to everyone. I don't think I paid a fee. If I did, it was maybe like £1, you know, for the year. And you'd get these updates about Elvis, mainly that he was still dead and he wasn't coming back. But then there'd be all these weird stories about Elvis written by fans, these kind of short stories that painted him in this light where he was like some sort of messianic figure. That's the word. I nearly had trouble saying that. Not nearly. I did have trouble saying that. Sort of, you know, like a kind of a untouchable, wonderful, sent from God kind of person who absolutely did nothing wrong. But look, there's a lot of problematic shit with Elvis, and I'm not just talking about the drug taking in later years and carrying around guns and shooting televisions, which is very dangerous because you could come across someone who has a very square head and is like talking to you, and you might think it's a television and shoot it accidentally. I'm like, oh my God, I'm show TV. I can't do an Elvis impression. I can do some impressions, but not Elvis impressions. So what happened was I was a fan of Elvis. You know, that's how it goes. And I would listen to Elvis extensively. And then I'd listen to other rock and roll things like the Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly. I got a bit too Jewish there at the end of that Christopher Walken impression. Yes. So I listened to him, and it was so good, and I wanted to dance to the music, and it's got a backbeat. You can't lose it. So I was into rock and roll. Very, very, you know, like in the late 1980s, early 1990s, I was listening to 1950s rock and roll music. And myself and my brother used to record songs, And I found out years later that we would record songs in basically the same way that Elvis would record songs. Now, we were recording songs probably in the late 90s, early 2000s. So our methods were pretty antique in that we would record music with one microphone and we just move either the microphone or usually ourselves, because the microphone was attached to the PC that we were using, which was an old square Windows 95 job. And we had this microphone that was used for like presentations, for like business presentations. It wasn't like a sexy, cool microphone. It wasn't one of those 50s microphones, you know, that kind of cool crooner design microphones that I guess they sound good, but they're kind of, you know, like retro style. And we just place ourselves in the room. That's how Elvis would record. The musicians would move either closer to the microphone or further away, and they'd try and separate them in the room so you wouldn't have any sort of bleed over. But that's how they recorded all of those early Elvis tunes. Everyone in the studio, and they just do take after take after take. And that's what we would do, except we would improvise a song for who knows how long. And we just, sometimes we'd have like 20 minutes of just jamming. And then eventually we'd pick a 3-minute section out of the middle of it. And I have mentioned this on the podcast before. You can go on SoundCloud and find the Majestic All Stars. I'll stick a link up in the description of this podcast, so you can listen to all that stuff. It's kind of crazy, and we were very young, but we were having fun. And speaking of having fun in the studio, the Beatles, the new documentary that was released on Disney Plus, directed by Peter Jackson, a 3-part documentary, which myself and Cara have been watching it. Now, we nearly got divorced yesterday because she found out that I had watched about a half an hour of the second episode by myself with headphones on, because I really wanted to hear the tunes. Because we were watching it on the laptop in the room, and all the time we had Luke there, and he would be getting a bit fussy. I'd have to walk him around the room, so I was missing some of the documentary. Now I'll probably watch it again and again and again and again, but it's really good. And there's been some opinion pieces written about it because of its length, and because Peter Jackson, who obviously he made The Lord of the Rings, and then he made The Hobbit, which was taking a very small book and stretching it out to 3 movies that weren't very good. So everyone was like, oh, Peter Jackson's at it again. But what actually happened was that he took all this footage, 50 hours that were cut into a movie called Let It Be, which was released in 1970, which I've never seen. It's an 80-minute, so not even, just under an hour and a half, and it's not great. A bit sort of, it's like it's the Beatles breaking up captured on film is kind of how it had always been marketed. Now, to be honest, I might try and find it and watch it just to compare and contrast. But Peter Jackson had all that footage, 50 hours, about 150 hours of audio footage, including some audio footage of John and Paul talking in a room where there was a microphone hidden in a potted plant that they didn't know about. And obviously they got permission from Paul, who's still alive, and Yoko, who is the custodian of John Lennon's estate and is fiercely protective of him, as you imagine she would be. But the Peter Jackson cut together a 2-hour movie that was going to be released in cinemas, and I remember hearing about that and going, wow, that's going to be amazing, because I did see the Ron Howard directed movie 8 Days a Week, which it was about the sort of the touring years of the Beatles, and he had taken the original footage and the original audio and cleaned it up and tried to take out the screaming girls as much as possible and just focus on the tunes, which I don't think some of the Beatles were very happy about, because at the time they couldn't hear each other and they'd get lost and they'd play things like 4 times as fast because of the adrenaline of all these, girls screaming at them. And it just got too much. Now, I know Paul wanted to keep on trucking and keep on playing live, and that's what I was listening to on Spotify. If the Spotify algorithm was even more precise, it would have noticed that, yes, I was listening to the Beatles, but I was more so listening to Paul's songs from the Beatles era. Because when I was younger, and I think this just, you could almost say the Beatles span the age of man, if you want to say that, in that when you're a teenager, you kind of identify more with John because he's sarcastic, he's very funny, he's very pointed, he seems like a little bit of a prick, but a funny bollocks, and he's cool, and then for a certain time I got into George, because I like George's kind of mellow mysticism, and he was into, the mantra and meditation and all that. And, his solo records are very good. And, of course, Ringo, Ringo, not that I don't like Ringo, but, I mean, I really, really love Ringo's fills on A Day in the Life. Shun-dum, ba-dum. In between the bits and pieces, the singing, he has these lovely little fills that are just fantastic. And there's always a kind of a disregard for Ringo. Even the Beatles joke that he wasn't even the best drummer in the band. But the thing about it is, you see this with so many bands, they always replace their drummer. There's always a thing where, you think the drummer would be the least important. And, there's all those jokes about, drummers like hanging out with musicians, which is obviously dismissive of the drumming. But Oasis got a new drummer, fired their old drummer. The Beatles did it. There's probably other examples, bar those 2 that I've mentioned. But, like the songwriters, the guitarists, the singers, they're the kind of out front. But it all falls apart if you don't have a good skin man, which is, I think, what they call drummers skin men. They have skin, they beat skins, and they're good skins. And Ringo, for a lot of the Get Back documentary, looks like a sort of a hungover dog. And he's the oldest out of them, but he's only 29. Like, this is the thing as well. Like, George was like 25, Ringo was 29, John and Paul, I think, were in the same age. I think John's maybe 28, Paul's 27. So they're all still in their 20s. And I really love the very sort of almost old school songwriting abilities of Paul. And in this Get Back documentary, which some people have said it's too long and made the Peter Jackson joke that it's too long. And then I read something that was like, oh, the people who are saying it's too long obviously aren't creative people and don't understand the creative process and blah, blah, blah. And I know, like, one of my friends, Trevor Brown, who hosts the CineStream Club, which I am a part of, every Wednesday fortnight on the Head Stuff Podcast Network. There's a plug for you. But he was saying there's a bit where George and Ringo are talking about what they watched on TV that night, and Peter Jackson got like the TV guide from that specific night in January 1969 and showed little clips of what they were talking about, and Trevor was saying, like, what the fuck's that got to do with anything? Like, that's totally unnecessary filler material. Like, a lot of people are saying the documentary feels like the sort of extras that you would get on a DVD, obviously because there's like 50 hours cleaned up to cut all of this together. And there is part of me that I would like to see a 2-hour movie And that is the kind of magic of an edited, 3-act movie where you get across the whole story in a shorter amount of time, but it has more resonance. Like, I've seen movies that cover documentaries that cover years, and they're not as long as this. And this only covers 22 days that they were shooting the Beatles. But Paul, for sure, comes across as, not the leader of the Beatles, but the engine of the Beatles. Like, he is the one who is kind of cracking the whip. And he's very much a sort of a type A personality, because there's points where he's bemoaning the kind of loose structure of everything. And he's like, guys, we need a schedule, and we need, clear aims that we're reaching towards, and hitting our marks and getting these songs out. And John's like, I just want to play songs. Now I sound like the Walk Hard version of the Beatles, the Dewey Cox story, where the Beatles were played by Paul Rudd and Jack Black. And who else was it in there? I can't remember. American actors. Look it up. IMDb it. But yeah, I have really enjoyed Get Back. We're on the last episode, and I kind of don't want it to end because I don't get to hang out with the Beatles anymore. It really, at some points, it really feels like you're just sitting in the room with them and just observing. And you're like one of those kind of roadies or engineers that just work in the studio, and they're just dressed in normal clothes and they look like your dad, and they're hanging around listening to the Beatles playing music. And I'm kind of like, did they even appreciate it? There's an amazing kind of normal aspect to it. And Paul, for sure, definitely comes across as just a man going to work. He's just doing his job. And, he's obviously very, very good at his job. But he seems to have, obviously he has an ego, but he seems to have less of an ego than the others, apart from Ringo, who, Ringo was becoming a bit of an actor at that point. And the reason they only have 22 days is that Ringo has to start shooting a movie called The Magic Christian, which I've never seen, never even really heard of. And Peter Sellers is in it. And Peter Sellers, who, I don't know if you know much about Peter Sellers, but he was a bit of a kind of a crazy man, a bit of an eccentric. And there's a great movie, actually, The Life and Death of Peter Sellers, with Geoffrey Rush, whom, has he been cancelled? There's a couple of people who've been accused of various things during the Me Too movement, and Geoffrey Rush was one of them. And what's his name? Dustin Hoffman was another one. And since that, they've just quietly almost retired. I don't think Geoffrey Rush has been doing some sort of stage stuff. But anyway, he plays Peter Sellers in that movie, and he's maybe a little bit too old to play Peter Sellers. But it's a very good movie, actually. It's a good biopic. It's a bit sort of more fantastical and not as sort of straight and sober as some of these things can be. I know because I've an interview with Steve Coogan, and he auditioned to play Peter Sellers. And when I found that out, I was like, "Ooh, I wonder what that movie would be like." Movies lost to time. So, Get Back. Yeah, there's a wonderful 2-minute bit where it's early in the morning, and George and Ringo are just kind of yawning, and Paul is just sort of jamming on the bass and just making up words, and he just sort of conjures Get Back out of thin air, and it's amazing. And of course, he always came across as the kind of, not the boring Beatle. I know that was his, George was the quiet one. But George is 25 and he's frustrated, and he's got all these songs that are being rejected, by the rest of the group. He's in the shadow of John and Paul, and it's tense, and then it gets kind of cool and groovy, and they start playing rock and roll songs that they've been playing for years, and part of me is like going, come on guys, pull the finger out, get this album out there. So they're number one in my Spotify because of my appreciation for Paul McCartney as I get older. And that's the beautiful thing about music, that you can find new things in old music, and it just speaks to you differently because you're a little bit different. Radiohead was my second, and then in my Spotify top songs for the year, there was a couple of Beatle tracks in there, and there was one or a couple of tracks from an artist that I'd like to give a shout out to because I think she should be more famous than she is, and her name is Gavin Turek. Now, I don't know if Gavin is holding her back, because Gavin sounds like, all right, mate, it's me, Gavin. I do like soul numbers. I do sort of groovy, sort of disco stuff, old school sort of 70s vibe. I'm a dancer as well. Yeah, dance. I love to dance. You love to dance? I love to dance. You dance. I dance. But she is really good. She Madam Gold is her album. I would also recommend her EP, which is what I heard first. Her EP, which has "It's the Light," which is one of my top tracks. It was in my top 100, and also Wolfpack, Vulfpeck. Wolfpack, kind of, I guess they call them a jam band, but I'd never hear them eating any jam on toast. I just hear groovy tunes. So look, here, let's have, not them, but let's have a groovy tune from me. Let me play you a groovy tune. Groovy times are coming back. Don't you worry about that. Groovy times will come once more. Don't you worry, just wait by the door. Groovy people are going door to door, selling groovy things. You can buy a groovy thing from them, and you'll be in the groove. Delight say that groove was in the heart, and it's time for you to start. This is not a groovy song, but you can all sing along. There you have it now. So, guys, that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. If you can spare a minute and give me a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be great. It helps put this podcast into the ears of people who enjoy it, like you. If you want to become a patron of Edwin Salmon of Knowledge, go to Edwin Salmon of Knowledge on Patreon. And for less than the price of a pint of Guinness a month, you can become a patron and get all the extra bonus stuff that is there, and bonus episodes and stuff that goes out early, and extra podcasts that I'm involved in that go out early, and all sorts of stuff. Here, you can even ask me anything, get me to do a podcast on any specific topic. I am yours for the taking if you want to become a patron. So take care, guys, and I will see you soon. Baby Detective episode coming up midweek. You'll get that early as a patron. Bye.